need to go back to use the coal, which is far away, 500 kilometers away from here. It is produced in an inefficient manner, creating pollution there, you're having transmission distribution losses. Why not put this panel on our rooftop? We only need a panel of about 10 watts to take care of our energy requirement, lighting requirement. So there is a way to do things. If you follow a particular pattern with an integrated approach, we see where we need to act first. But you can see in many countries today, the government is talking about how do you bring in renewable energy first. The government is talking about how do you replace coal by renewable energy without looking at the whole chain. You can see we can never achieve the number that we can achieve by going down to this step in a methodical manner, because we'll still talk about 80% fossil fuel and 20% renewable energy. This is the target of European Union. For 2020, they would like to have 20% renewable energy. That's not enough. And we've seen that how quickly we are running out of resources. So, for every system, we need to have this approach to have a full picture of what is happening. Where do we need to act first? And interestingly, what do you find here? This solution actually is going to be cheaper than this solution. Because if you go for an incandescent lamp, which is typically $50 or less in the market, you go for LED lamp today, which can be even $10 in the market. There's a factor 20 times more expensive. But you can see the impact of that in the whole chain. The power plant that we need to invest in is much more expensive. By changing the lamp here, we can see the investment that we need in the solar is going to be only a very small fraction. And overall cost actually is going to come down. This cost of this system is actually cheaper than going for the conventional system. And unless the government system understands this very well, we'll continue to do it, because in many cases, you are in charge. As building user or industry, you are in charge only of this part. You are not in charge of the power generation. But here, many countries, you can find there is a shortage, whether it is Myanmar or Vietnam or Cambodia, there is a shortage of supply. The government is not able to cope up with this new power plants. If they adopted this option, they will find that people take up certain responsibility, because they will take care of part of the resources requirement. Okay. So this is how we can bring in renewable energy in a manner which is sustainable. It's not how many megawatts and gigawatts that we put in. How do you reduce our resource requirement first and then match it with the right sizes of renewable energy systems, which will be, because let's not forget that even to produce this solar cell, we do require fossil fuel for the years to come. So as much as possible, why not try to look at how we reduce the energy required to manufacture this, because we'll have to look at the energy payback period of this type of energy systems. So in the business, now I'll take it up with that same concept that we have seen. I've talked about lighting, we could talk about equipment, we'll talk about heating and cooling processes, we'll talk about any other loads, electrical loads. In each of the cases, we can see the whole story and how do we adapt it. We talked about industry that requires processes to deliver products and services. Those processes may require certain amount of energy. To produce, to run these processes, to provide the services, we have some losses because the system is not 100% efficient. To provide services, energy services, we have distribution losses we have seen earlier. And we have utilities, it can be a boiler, or chiller, or a compressor in the plant. And your utilities have certain efficiencies, you have further losses. And all this you can see add up to 100%. And this is today supplied by fossil fuel. We want to see in what way we can change this business as usual scenario. Find a least cost path. How do you find a least cost path by which we reduce our dependence on fossil fuel in a gradual manner over the periods so that we become more and more sustainable? There is not much we can do about service requirements because that's on the consumer side. unless the consumer acts, it's very difficult for an industry to do something about it. So assuming that that remains the same, we know that it's possible for us to reduce the losses in the conversion processes. It's possible for us to reduce the demand losses in the distribution and utility losses. Technology is again evolving with time. We can go for a more efficient boiler, more efficient chiller, more efficient distribution system by which you can see everywhere we can reduce. Starting with 100, we can bring it down to about 50% less. Okay? So that you can see we can divide it by 2 by demand management with its efficient processes through process integration. Waste of one process is taken as input for another one. Efficient network, again, my colleague is going to speak more about industrial symbiosis. I will not talk about it, how I'm just talking about one industry, one building. You could have interaction between the industries. How can you go further? He's going to talk more about the industrial symbiosis, how is it taking place in industrial estate. We'll be visiting one of them later. So we come to the business as usual scenario, and through the integrated approach, we have already achieved half of it. But at the same time, you can see the technology is progressing. We have new processes which are completely disruptive processes by which you can divide the consumption again 3 or 4 times. You can achieve much better. Now you can see gradually at this stage, if you start looking at introducing renewable energy, we'll have a much greater share of renewable energy coming into our production process than if you did not do these efforts first and went directly on trying to replace fossil fuel by it